Today we're going to replace the valve cover gasket and spark plug seals on a 2008 Smart for 2. These are the parts that you'll need. You'll need the valve cover gasket and also 3 of these spark plug seals. The part that I have is NOK 198128. There's also the OEM ones. They're over $100 for a set of 3. These were like $15 each, a little less than half the price. And then you can get the OEM one, but the one I have is the 036-2043. I'm recording this after the fact. After replacing the valve cover gasket, I have a better idea of what to do in what sequence, so I'm just going to explain that to you. I would start with removing the air box baffle. I'm holding the light with one hand and my camera with the other hand, so I'm just going to point, and whatever's in the middle, that's what you should remove. So in the middle, there's a flathead screwdriver. You'll remove that. There's one right there as well. And then in order to remove this is a T25. So that's the thing right there behind that tube. And then over here we have one as well. Also, when you remove the air baffle, you'll remove this tube as well. And then you have access to stuff right there. And then moving over here, these are the ignition coils. So there's a 10mm socket. There's 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. You can use a 3/8" ratchet with a 10mm socket to get that and that. And this one's a little harder. I had to use a 10mm wrench. You also remove this tube, so it helps to remove that tube first so you can get more space to access that one. Once you have those out, you'll unplug these 3 clips and then you'll take the coils out. There's also these 3 clips for the injectors, so you'll remove that one. 1, 2, 3. There's also a clip here that you would remove. You have to remove this assembly. It's just clipped on. And then down there, I don't know if you can see it, but it's that red and green thing. You'll have to remove that plug as well. This used to be right there, so I just pinched it in and then wiggled it out, so I got that off. So this is the O2 sensor plug. I just shoved this off to the side so I can get more clearance. This assembly right here, it's not really necessary, but there is a 10mm bolt that you can remove right there. You can also unclip it by pulling that tab and lifting that up. Same thing over here. You can just pull that tab and lift it up. You'll have to remove this clip. Then moving on over here, there's a bracket right there. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's 2 10mm bolts that you would remove there. And then you can unclip this as well. And then remove this tube. This is actually blocking one of the valve bolts, so you have to remove that. So you'll go from the bottom, and then there's 2 14mm bolts that you would loosen. I'll show you guys where that is. You'll just loosen them. You don't have to remove them. You don't have to jack up the car either. Just loosen them so you get enough clearance to get to 3 of the bolts underneath this. I'll show you guys that as well. We're underneath the car, and right in the middle there's this this is a T14 bolt. So I just loosened that. I loosened that on the other side as well. So once that was loose, I didn't totally remove it because I'm not sure if it will fall out. I lowered it about 1 inch, and once I had that, right here you see these three bolts. They're T12s, so when I lowered that, I was able to get enough clearance to loosen all of these. There's a T12 socket on a 3/8" ratchet, and I was able to loosen them from the front, but the one in the back, I found that was easier to fish the socket on the other side and loosen it there. I have them loose, and I'm going to use my hands to get them out. And this thing comes off, but also you have to go to the end of this, and I'll show you guys a picture of that. There's 3 bolts that hold this in place. Down here, there's this metal intake piece, and then I'm just removing these bolts from it. And once you have that loosened and these, you can remove this entire assembly. That was probably the hardest thing to take off. And once you have all of that removed, I know it's kind of hard to imagine, but there's 10 bolts that hold this valve cover in place, and then you'll just remove those. I find that to be the best way to remove this cover. You can use a 3/8" ratchet with, this is about a 2" extension and a 10mm socket at the end. So there's one right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 right there. For the one in this corner, you don't have to use the extension. This O2 sensor is in the way, so it helps if you do not use the extension. This whole thing should just slide off now. Alright. Now that this is off, I'm going to clean it up and put on the new gasket. Clean this off as well. This is the old one that was leaking, and this is the new one. I just want to show you where the bolts were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can take a look at this, and when you're disassembling it or reassembling it, you'll know where they go. Gotta make sure that the new gasket's the right one before I peel off the old one. So I started peeling it off and it started flaking. So this is kind of bad. Like, it won't come off in one piece, it's just coming out chunk by chunk. I decided to use a razor to go through all of this. I gotta go back and go into these grooves and clean them out. I cleaned it as best I could. Now I'm gonna put some sealant, just a light bead all around, and then I'm gonna put the gasket on. Make sure you blow out all the debris that's in here. You don't want that mixing with the oil. You can use a can of compressed air. This should have cured by now, so I'm going to put it back in. Couldn't find any torque spec, but I'm going to do about 10 to 15 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. I'm doing one last pass to make sure everything's tight. Now that the valve cover is in place, we're just going to reverse the process. I'm going to continue putting all this back together. Last is to put the air box baffle in, and there's a screw that goes in right here, and then one over there as well. There's also the clamp right there, and the one over there. Finished putting everything back together, so I'm going to start the car, make sure that everything works. I just finished replacing the valve cover gasket and the spark plug seal, so I just want to make sure that it starts up fine without check engine light. So far it seems to be running well, no lights. There doesn't seem to be any issues here either, so I think we're good.